pretty good group already. Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Valerie Fox. I'm the Vice President of your ORIMS Board of Directors. And on behalf of Fatima Chamali, who is our Director of Professional Development, and the entire ORIMS Board, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for what is certain to be a very informative and insightful panel discussion on vehicle, equipment, and cargo theft. Before we begin the session, we would like to show our respect with a land acknowledgement. I wish to acknowledge that the lands that I am on are the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit. I recognize that we all work and live in different places and that some of you come from different Indigenous communities and territories, but regardless of where we are all interconnected through the lands that we live on, the water that we use, and the air that we breathe. We are all committed to a journey of continuous learning through allyship. Okay, thank you. All right, now to the business at hand. If any of you belong to one of those neighborhood communication groups such as Nextdoor, One Roof, or maybe just a private Facebook group, you've probably noticed that almost every day somebody posts information about and reports a theft or an attempted theft of a vehicle from their residence. And this alarming trend has a serious impact on corporate fleets as well, not only at the personal level. So the steep increase in vehicle and equipment theft, regardless of what industry you work in, has become a very serious problem for all businesses. And I do see today that we have a number of people registered from a wide variety of different industries. Yes, we've got the transport companies and the delivery companies for sure, but we also have property management companies, public sector employees and services, educational institutions, construction industry. We've got a broad spectrum on this call today, so that's great. Wherever you're coming from, as risk managers, you need to be evaluating the potential impact of this problem on your organization and whether you have the necessary precautions in place to protect your assets. So today, ORIMS has invited a panel of industry experts with unique perspectives to provide insight, to discuss preventative measures and best practices, and to give you some additional industry knowledge to help you develop or enhance your current risk management and loss prevention procedures. So our goal today for this session is for you to take away information on commercial auto and equipment theft trends, preventative measures and best practices, and what to do and what to expect if your equipment does get stolen despite of your best efforts. So in order to ensure that we get through all of the material today, because there is quite a bit, I would ask you to put your questions as we go along into the chat section. And at the end, we'll ask our panelists to respond to all of those questions. Throughout the presentations, we will have everyone on mute as usual, but time permitting at the end, we'll open the audio, open the floor to any additional last minute questions that may come up. All right, so that's the sort of course for today. So now it's my pleasure to turn this over to our first speaker, Tat Wong. Tat, thank you for being here and welcome.
Well, thank you, Fatima, and thank you, Val, for the invitation to represent and present to all the ORIMS members. Certainly in our first discussion in communications with Fatima, it was really focused on personal lines and the increase in thefts that we've seen from our local neighborhoods. But as we scratch the surface of the issue, we realize that the issue is much, much more far-reaching in terms of our economies and our professional lives as risk management professionals. So I am National Transportation Practice Leader in Canada for Marsh. And most of my personal book clients are in trucking or transportation. But I also spend a great deal of my time supporting our corporate clients and our risk management practice clients in commercial automobile. So we're very, very conversant in the fact that many of you are concerned about many of the issues that hopefully we'll be able to help coach you guys up to have better solutions for in the remaining part of this presentation. So I have a couple of decades of experience in the insurance industry, and I spent most of my career on the insurance company side, including some experience in claims. So it's an industry that's served my professional life very well. And I have a real passion for helping our clients, which is one of the biggest reasons why we're on this call today. And in my free time, I managed to accumulate my fellowship in the Insurance Institute of Canada, my Canadian Risk Management designation, as well as to be subject matter expert to the C48 Insurance Institute textbook for automobile insurance, part 2. So sharing my clients' needs is really my passion, and that's why I'm delighted that today we can talk about these things and how we can help your organizations and even help you within your personal circle of influence. Okay, so over to Jamie Lee for her introduction.
Thanks, Tat. Hi, everyone. So I lead the Fraud and Financial Crime Intelligence and Strategy team for Aviva. So this team, what does it really do? We actually look at ways that we can help protect our customers from fraud and financial crime, and actually give prevention tips and build up information that we can share with the police and the industry. I've actually been in the industry for 15 years in the insurance industry, and I've worked across Canadian and European markets. And in some of the areas I've been more in specifically is in claims, audit and risk. So I have quite a wide variety of kind of opinions and areas that I've worked in that gives me good knowledge in these areas. In terms of my education, I have a degree in criminology and an international diploma in financial crime prevention. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Don Williams.
Good day, everybody. Don Williams. I'm a AVP National Line Lead for Commercial Automobile Team in the Global Corporate Specialty area here in Aviva. So I lead an underwriting team that specializes in commercial automobile, looking at a lot of large corporate and transportation customers. I've been in the industry for over 30 years, always in the commercial automobile underwriting role. And happy to be here and share some insight on some of the theft trends that we've been seeing recently. I'll pass it over to Stacy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stacy Gallant. I'm here for the law enforcement perspective aspect. I spent 31 years as a Toronto police officer. I retired as a detective sergeant. During my career, I spent a number of years in the cargo and auto theft unit, along with the gun and gang task force. And I spent approximately 15 years in the homicide squad, ending off my career. When I left there, I moved over to Garda World, and I became the Director of Consulting Services and Investigations for Ontario. So basically what that is a private investigative firm within Garda World, which a lot of people know as a large security company, Canadian security company, that operates cash services with your armored vehicles and your traditional guards at guarding locations. My aspect is strictly investigations for the corporate world and outside agencies that are looking for that private investigative step involved in any corporate issues that you might have. And Tad, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Jamie. So let's kind of tee up the issues and look at the big picture before we kind of zoom in on some of the more granular facts. So when we look at our economic condition circa 2023, there are challenges. We all know that inflation is hitting our economy pretty hard. Interest rate pressures are still going up to battle the inflation. And when you look at that, within your organizations, there are stressors to your total cost of risk. Because not only are your risk transfer premiums pressured upwards, your internal absorbed or retained costs are pressured upwards tremendously. So let's touch upon 4 of the areas that a lot of my clients have expressed concern about. So when I look and I visit with my clients, I'm looking at the top 10 expense line items. And certainly for my client base, these are clearly top 10, if not top 5. So first of all, let's touch on tire costs. Pre-pandemic versus now today, tire costs have increased over 40%. Now, gratefully, the supply chain is stabilizing so that when it comes to private passenger automobile tires, availability is pretty good today, but it is not at the cost points prior to pandemic. When you pivot to commercial automobile, the story is completely different. Early in the pandemic, we had a sophisticated client with a couple of hundred trailers and Class 8 power units. They had no choice but to deal directly with tire manufacturers to begin filling a warehouse with a 1-year supply of Class 8 heavy truck tires. So this is something that they never had to do before because we were facing unprecedented times. They never knew when the supply chain would be going back to more normal. And then to add to that, we all know, if you've been in the insurance industry, that tires are a target commodity for theft. So it created a perfect storm because there was increasing demand because guess what? Early in the pandemic, obviously a lot of us parked our cars because we could work from home, but trucking and any of your commercial vehicles, they were deemed essential services and they could move. So where would you be getting the replacement tires? That was a challenge. Okay, number 2, fuel prices. This was quite shocking when I did the research there. But fuel prices between January of 2020 in Greater Toronto for diesel was January 2020, 124.9. Fast forward to December 2022, Greater Toronto area diesel prices were 207.7. So those of you math whizzes, that's just under 67% increase. So that is a great, great challenge. We know, and we all look overseas at great concern at this war that still is happening in Europe. And the latest news that I picked up was global news. On January 9th of 2023, they actually said, Canadian fuel prices will see all-time highs in oil and gas throughout 2023. A very expensive time. Okay, 4th issue is maintenance costs. Maintenance costs are up substantially, over 25%. Now, this would apply mostly to commercial vehicles. I don't know if you're experiencing that same maintenance cost increase on the private passenger vehicles, but the maintenance costs are up because there is a great shortage of the certified technicians that are necessary to work on heavy equipment. So these maintenance costs, which are an essential part of the supply chain and your total cost of risk, they are up quite uncontrollably. And then the last tile on the slide is just talking about repair and replacement. So here are 2 real true stories that happened to my clients. One client, their Class 8 heavy truck had a hood that was damaged. It was damaged so that it was unsafe for it to be operated on the road. They had to park this truck for 4 months until a suitable replacement hood could be found. So not only do you have the loss of income, the loss of opportunity, but you have that downtime claim, which is really an internal cost. So think about that when it comes to your total cost of risk in the organizations that you have. Another one of our clients, they were hauling a 2022 vehicle, and the 2022 vehicle got damaged. The damage was only about $10,000, but because of lack of availability of parts, we're forced to settle with the shipper consignee at the total value of the vehicle. So that's where we are setting the stage for a lot of the granular details. So over to Jamie.
Thanks, Tab. Yeah, so to talk a little bit more in detail around the actual theft trends that we've seen in 2022, what we're seeing is theft losses are increasing dramatically, funding organized crime, drug and gun trade, and even in some cases, terrorist financing. So what we're actually seeing is we're not seeing the traditional thefts that we may have seen before, where there may be a joyride, but we're actually starting to see more sophistication with the way the vehicles are stolen and how they're used. So 4 areas that we've really seen an increase in. The first area is cargo theft. So cargo theft has been increasing dramatically, and Brampton is actually now the 2nd highest city in North America for cargo theft. The reason for this is because it's low reward, it's low risk for criminals with high reward. And there's a lot of opportunity there at the moment with drivers leaving their loads behind and the opportunity for criminals to steal the loads. A second area is equipment theft. So we have actually also been seeing criminals that are actually having the opportunity to steal specialty equipment. This may include trailers and farming machinery. So we do expect to see this trend continue in 2023. And specifically, we have seen this as a higher risk in Alberta. And we recently saw, you may have seen in the news, the police have taken down a gang in Edmonton, recovering over 100 vehicles and equipment worth around $3 million. One big area that we're really focused on as a company at the moment is vehicle theft. So I'm sure you've all heard about vehicle theft. It's in the news a lot at the moment. And I think, you know, at the start of the presentation, as it was mentioned, it may be something you're even hearing in your neighborhood or seeing. Aviva has actually seen a 45% increase in vehicle theft from 2021 to 2022. Criminal gangs are actually targeting certain vehicles, and some of the top 5 vehicles may include Honda CR-Vs, Toyota Highlanders, Land Rover, which are all easier to steal using technology. So we are seeing these being targeted by criminals. This is consistent with the industry. And what we're actually seeing is the criminals are moving. So this used to be a bigger issue in Quebec, and we're now starting to see this issue move into Ontario. And as you'll see on the page here, we've actually mapped out the thefts with Aviva to try and highlight the high-risk regions to notify customers and dealerships that may be a target in those regions. In some cases, we've actually seen multiple vehicles stolen in one night. So in one dealership that we dealt with, we actually saw, I think it was 8 to 9 vehicles stolen in a night, and they were gone within one hour. So it's very quick for the criminals to target the vehicles. Lastly, just following on from Tat's point around replacement parts. So we are seeing vehicle parts thefts. So we do see criminals are also seeing an opportunity with parts due to the supply and demand issues. Specifically, we've seen an increase in catalytic converter thefts, which Don is going to cover a bit more for us in a later slide. But you may have seen just recently, the police have seized 700 catalytic converters, drugs and firearms in Edmonton in a recent case. So again, we are seeing that link to organized criminal activity and more sophistication in the type of thefts. So if we move on to the next slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit more around vehicle thefts. So why do we see criminals targeting vehicles to steal? So as we talked about, the supply chain issues, the lack of replacement parts, but also there's a high demand for vehicles and parts and equipment. And as commodity prices go up, so do the potential thefts of any commodity. The biggest trend that we're actually seeing is criminals are shipping the vehicles overseas, which means in the past, when we did have a vehicle theft, there was a strong likelihood we'd be able to recover the vehicle. But now, because the criminals are quick and are able to ship these overseas, we're actually finding it more difficult to recover the vehicles. And we've actually found vehicles in Dubai, Africa, Belgium, lots of different areas all across the world where they're shipping the vehicles to. The reason for this is the value of vehicles is nearly double in other countries. So actually the criminals are actually making double the money, as well as the vehicle increasing here, they're actually making double the money shipping them overseas. Other trends that we've seen is vehicles being broken down for parts. So you'll actually see in the picture here that a Mercedes was broken down for parts. The vehicles are taken apart very quickly. So if the criminals aren't shipping the vehicles overseas, they often take them to a warehouse and they'll strip them down, and then they'll sell the parts or they'll use them as part of a repair facility. Lastly, another piece we've seen in the vehicle thefts is actually we're seeing vehicles being re-VINed by criminals. So this is so they can actually put them back on the road, or they potentially submit a fraudulent claim. So what do? So they actually take a stolen vehicle and they may use a VIN that's legitimate from another vehicle. So it may be a vehicle from the US, or it may be a scrapped vehicle. They use the VIN and they claim it's a different vehicle, so we don't pick up that it's stolen. And they use this to potentially help support some of their criminal activities to go undetected by police. And also they may even just generate a completely fictitious VIN and submit a claim to try and get cash from insurance companies. So how are vehicles stolen? This is another advancement that we've seen in technology and an area that's more sophisticated. So a vehicle can now actually be stolen in 15 seconds. One of the ways that criminals can steal vehicles, so they can actually buy certain technology on the internet. One of them may be a controller area network, which is, they use that as an attack, and it's carried out by physically connecting an emergency start device to the vehicle's port. This attack exploits the engine management and body electronic functions and gives the criminal access to the vehicle very quickly to be able to open the door and operate the vehicle. This is what we're up against, and it's very difficult for us to prevent the criminals from actually stealing vehicles. Other ways that they may be able to also get their hands on this type of other technology, they may also be able to reprogram your fob. So if your keys are near the front door, they can actually use a device that can read the key and open the vehicle. So one of the tips for prevention that we really recommend here is to prevent a relay attack. Ensure you have vehicles, the keys away from doors and windows, and also consider storing them in an aluminium box. Other tips and preventions that we try to recommend to our customers is actually, even though it's old school, a steering wheel lock may be very effective because it does slow the criminals down. And actually, when they look at different vehicles in the neighborhood, they may actually feel this isn't one that they want to spend the time on because they want to make it quick. They want to steal a vehicle quickly. But lastly, an area that we've really seen help improve in this space is some good tracking devices that we're seeing on the market. So standard tracking devices in your vehicles are always worth activating if your vehicle is stolen. However, the criminals often know where this technology is. Unfortunately, when you buy a vehicle, the tracking device in the vehicle is always going to be in the same place, and it's the same technology. So the criminals quickly learn this, and they quickly know how to take this technology out. But what we have seen is there are some other products in the market where they actually can implement tracking devices into vehicles in different areas and make it very difficult for the criminals to identify these tracking devices and actually take them out of the vehicle, which makes it a lot more successful for recovery. So we have some great tips on prevention and theft, and we have a blog which we share these tips and preventions, which will be shared in the appendix at the end. But we're going to hand over to Don now, who will talk more around some other trends that we've seen.
Great, thanks, Jamie. So as Jamie was discussing, so we've talked about the actual theft of an entire vehicle being shipped over for resale. We've talked about vehicles that have been stolen, dismantled, and sold for their individual parts. So now what I'm going to talk about is specific theft of a vehicle component. And what we're going to focus on is catalytic converters, which, as Jamie was saying, has been in the news quite a bit over the last few years. So what is a catalytic converter? So it's part of the emissions system of a vehicle. As you can see from the picture, it's located on the underside. And what it does is it takes the toxic gases that are produced by an internal combustion engine, and it catalyzes those gases through a chemical reaction, and the output is a less toxic exhaust. Now, the thieves, when they focus on the catalytic converter, it's not so much that they want to resell a catalytic converter. What they're actually going for is the precious metals that are inside the catalytic converter, and that's where the real value is. So these metals include palladium, rhodium, and platinum, some of which are worth more per ounce than gold. So, for example, rhodium ranges from $12,000 to $19,000 per ounce. So you can see why it's an attractive item for thieves to go after. The other thing is the catalytic converter, because it's on the underside of a vehicle, it's pretty easy to get access to it. So a thief just basically needs to get under the vehicle, and if they have a hacksaw or some other cutting device, they can easily take out the catalytic converter in a matter of minutes. And most likely you will not even notice that your catalytic converter has been stolen until you go and try to start the vehicle, and then you'll quickly realize something is gone wrong. As you can see there, in between 2020 and 2021, there was a 123% increase in catalytic converter thefts. Actually, in business insurance news just recently in the US, the National Insurance Crime Bureau reported in 2020, they saw a 325% increase in catalytic converter thefts. So it is rampant across North America. So what makes these thieves so successful in getting these? Well, again, all they do is they look for vehicles that they could get under. So they look for vehicles with a high ground clearance. A lot of them would be SUVs and like commercial pickup trucks. They look for a concentration of vehicles in an area where they can get after a lot of them. So in 2018 in Edmonton, there were 235 catalytic converters that were stolen over a short period of time from dealerships. As Jamie had mentioned, there was a theft ring that was just broken up where they found 700 catalytic converters that had been stolen. So the thieves know where to go. They go for a concentration of vehicles that have poor lighting, easy access, situations where there's enough time that they could get under the vehicles, be it during holidays or over a weekend where there's not going to be a lot of foot traffic or a lot of presence around there, so they have enough time to get under the vehicles and cut them out and take off with them without being noticed for a period of time. So what are some of the things that we can do to help in the prevention of the theft of catalytic converters? A couple of simple solutions. You could put a cover over the catalytic converter so that it makes it more difficult for the thieves to get access to the device. You could etch the VIN of your vehicle onto the catalytic converters so that if it does get stolen and is found, the police can track it back to a specific vehicle. Some other things are just simple proactive theft prevention techniques. If at all possible, park the vehicle in a secure garage. Make sure there's adequate lighting around a lot if you do have to park them outside. Secure the lot with a fence and gate so that there's not a lot of public access to the vehicles for an extended period of time. Certainly any live security, be it central monitored cameras or a watchman around the site that does a walk around to control any access to the vehicles and any suspicious behavior that might be happening around that time. And then the other thing is also control the access to the vehicles. So public access or employee access, who has access to the actual facility, the keys to the facilities, and knows what kind of activity, what kind of vehicles are going to be coming on the lot, and what are the general operating hours and who's present around the lot or the garage at any given time. So certainly know who has access and knowledge of your facilities. So go on and we'll talk a little bit more now about cargo theft. So cargo theft is not a new issue. It's existed ever since there's been the movement of goods. So with respect to cargo theft, we've seen a 15% increase across Canada and the US in 2022. Big increase in cargo theft related to specific items that are in high demand, things that we have shown there on the chart: mixed loads, groceries, automotive products, metals, alloys, electronics is always high on the list, personal hygiene. Basically, anything that has a market or a consumer demand is a target for theft. So what also we have to watch out for is there's a correlation, obviously, between cargo theft and vehicle theft. So a lot of times thieves will steal a truck or trailer in order to go and pick up a load. And then what happens is the truck and trailer could be recovered, and obviously the load has disappeared. They'll take the load to a separate location, they'll offload it, put it on another truck or split it up, put it into different trucks, and off it goes. And oftentimes it could be on a shipping container or in a number of different locations before it's even reported to police. The other thing is the loads get stolen with the truck. So thieves will steal the tractor trailer and the load altogether. And then what we end up with is recovery of the truck or trailer at some certain time. But then the result is there's usually damage to the truck or trailer. Either the thieves have damaged it to get access to the truck in order to steal it, or they've damaged the trailer to get access to the cargo inside. And oftentimes what happens too is the truck or trailer is destroyed. The thieves will destroy it in order to basically get rid of any incriminating evidence or any way of identifying who they are. Areas that we've watched out for and have tracked the trends for is Peel region. Peel region in North America is one of the hot zones for cargo theft. It is a hub for trucking operations, the number of warehouses concentrated in that area. There's an airport in that vicinity. There's also a number of rail yards. So there's a lot of access to cargo. There's a lot of different ways of getting cargo moved out of the area quickly. So what are some things that can be done with respect to controlling cargo theft? Certainly it's control whoever has access to goods on your truck and the movement of your truck and goods throughout the transport from point A to point B. So training of your drivers as to where they park their truck at any given time. Make sure they're parking in a secured location if at all possible. If they're parking their truck in a rest area, then make sure the driver watches out for any suspicious activity around their truck. Anybody that's taking a keen interest in their truck or asking a lot of questions as to where they're going and what they're hauling. Certainly, if at all possible, consider geofencing your truck. If you are hauling anything of a very high value, put some tracking devices in the truck, and if at possible, put tracking devices in the actual cargo, and watch the movement of it. And certainly, if it's going off a designated route, then certainly to catch that attention and report it, get on top of trying to track down where that truck and that cargo is going. Certainly, if what you should consider doing is adequate background checks. Adequate background checks, not just of your drivers, but of your dispatchers, of your warehouse workers, of your dock workers, and if you're a manufacturer or a distributor, and you use the services of third-party carriers, do a background check on your third-party carriers. Make sure you know who you're giving your loads to, and that they are reputable companies. And also ask a lot of questions if something looks suspicious, because another trend that has been popped up recently is identity theft, where the criminals will actually steal the identity of an actual trucking company, including their logo. They'll show up at their location looking to pick up a scheduled load, and before you know it, another truck shows up and they're saying, "I'm here to pick up the load," but it's already disappeared from a criminal. So consider some of those tips. The other thing is, if at all possible, follow organizations like Equity Association and CargoNet. These are associations that track cargo theft trends. They work closely with law enforcement to try to track down stolen loads. They put out alerts on any trends to the transportation industry. So certainly some good support that's available through those types of organizations. And what I'll do right now is I'll pass it on to Stacy, and he can talk about a little bit more about the prevention and work of law enforcement.
Excellent. That's all great information. And to tell you the truth, it's nothing that we haven't seen in the past. None of this is new. I was in law enforcement for over 30 years, and the same things were happening 25, 30 years ago when I was doing this type of work myself. What's changed in today's society or surrounding this kind of things is what we can do about it as protecting our own equipment, protecting our own cargo and that sort of thing. The criminals are still doing it the same way. They go in and they find what they're looking for and they steal it and then they sell it. That's common. You know, we have technology now that can help us. We have other avenues that can help us, and we have to leverage the different things that are out there to deal with it. The police aren't the only people that can deal with the stopping thefts from happening and making recoveries happen. There's a big difference between violent and non-violent incidents that invoke a police response. And what I'm talking about there is when there's a car theft, when there's a cargo theft, equipment theft, anything like that, there's a difference in way the police respond to it in an investigative capacity and in a general capacity. If it's a general theft that happens at 3 o'clock in the morning of a transport truck that's full of goods, or if it's a high-end vehicle that's stolen out of someone's driveway, and there's no violence attached to it, there's nobody injured, there's no carjacking, it's just disappeared in the middle of the night. The response you get to that from the police is they come at some point and they take a report, and then it gets put on a desk, and a detective, when they get around to it, will look at it and prioritize that against all the other things that they have going on. If you have, in fact, a violence that's attached to one of these type of crimes, you get a different response because it invokes some fear in the community that the police have to respond to it. And obviously they do in those situations. You get, you know, the police will respond right away. It'll come in as a 911 call. A detective will be assigned right away, and they will start trying to gather information and gather background information, video, witness statements, anything they can do to advance that investigation. With the nonviolent incidents, one of the key factors, I think, is getting someone working on the case immediately. And that's where it comes into the fact of the private investigators. Again, as a police officer, I was doing this 25 years ago, and there was private investigators involved in the field back then that were doing these same types of things. And if it's a nonviolent theft, and the police aren't going to react for a number of days or weeks, what you need is to have someone out there that's going to start taking driver statements, that's going to do searches in the area for video and retain that video, obtain it and retain it. Because if you have a video system in a neighboring building or in your own building, and it's on a loop of a 7-day loop or a 14-day loop, by the time the police come and ask for it, it may be long gone and recorded over. So you want to get that information secured as soon as possible so it can further the investigation if it moves forward. And the advantage of having some direct contact with PIs and investigators that have connections to the policing community is that there's an essentially a trust there as well. A lot of times the PIs come from the law enforcement background, and they know people in the cargo theft unit of the police, and you get a little bit of a different treatment from the police when you have that same background. I know that for a fact. I've seen it, I've witnessed it. That happens. There's a little bit more trust involved there. So, you know, getting that police and getting the PI involvement up in front, what they can do is they can gather all this evidence and they can bring it forward in a bit of a package to the police later on, 2-3 weeks down the road or a week down the road, and say, listen, we think we know where your cargo is. We think we know where the shipment went. It's in a warehouse in London, Mississauga, Brampton, wherever, because we have source information, because we've done surveillance. Here's the leads. The truck was recovered behind this location. We can put that together in a package and help them formulate a search warrant to possibly enable the police to go in and recover your stolen property and have that recovery quickly. One of the big issues with nonviolent versus violent as well is that once there are cargo thefts, there are cargo theft units, there are auto theft units out there. But as soon as something happens in a community where we have multiple shootings or where we have multiple violent crimes happening, what happens to those auto thefts and the cargo theft units is they get reassigned to the violent crime that's happening in the city, and then no one's working on those areas. That's commonly happens. I've had that happen to myself when I was in the cargo theft unit on a couple of occasions, because we got reassigned to an auto theft ring that was happening. And we talk about the difference between hijackings that are happening today and what was happening back a number of years ago. What used to happen was the bad guys would target a community or a specific car, and they would go and they'd kick in the front door of the house, because everybody stored their keys right near the front door on the little hanger or on the table next to the front door. They just grab the keys, take off, and take the car. That became a public safety issue. So the police put a lot of resources into that area, and then tried to stem that potential violence from happening. That took a lot of pressure off the cargo thieves. They just kept doing what they were doing with the cargo stuff, and kept going, because there was no violence attached to that at the time. Next slide. So, as I said, the cycle hasn't really changed in years, and what's going on out there hasn't changed in years. What we have is we have organized crime involved, and when I talk about organized crime, it can be bikers, it can be Eastern European, it can be African, East Indian, Asian, traditional organized crime, Italian mafia. It can be any one of these groups involved, and they also can be crossing over within each other now. They sometimes work together. One buys one thing from another, and they work in that area. So it's not exclusive to one group. They work in amongst themselves, and they do it for profit. The opportunity to move other products that they're dealing with and within organized crime also comes into play. If they're shipping a container out with some cars to another country, they might also include some drugs. They might include some guns, even at times there's been human trafficking that have gone on in conjunction with merchandise and cars being shipped overseas to different locations. So that happens where they're intermixing different types of criminal activity within the cargo theft, auto theft kind of realm of things. It gives them other opportunities to make money, and it is all about making money. And they have connections worldwide. One organized crime group will work with another in another country, and it's a revolving door of who's working with who. The thieves themselves, there's a varying experience levels amongst them. A lot of them are low level. They're paid by the job that they do. They're drug addicted, and really they're expendable. They get hired by whether it's organized crime or the buyers and sellers, and they go out and they target a specific thing that they're told to go and target. We need X amount of cars, we need Mercedes, or we need cargo. We're looking for a load of X, Y, and Z, and they go out and they target it and they get it. If they get caught, the organized crime or the buyers and sellers are somewhat insulated, because a lot of times they don't talk, they don't even know who they're working for. They just know they're going to go buy or going to go and steal something, and they're going to get paid a little bit of money at the end of the day. On the other hand, the buyers and sellers are in it for the money. Obviously, that's the big what they're looking for at the end of the day is the more money they can make, the better it is. They're going to buy it off the thieves, basically at a very low price, because the thieves half the time don't even know what they're stealing or what the value of the loads are or the vehicles. So they get it at a great price. And then the seller then increases the price and sells it and sells it and sells it. And it just keeps going on. And the more profit they make, the better it is for them. And again, they're insulated from the thieves, and they're insulated from the organized crime, because they're just off selling it to someone else again. So it becomes a very insulating kind of group when you think of how many different people are involved in some of these operations. Then we talk about the consequences of all this. It's very low. The consequences to the thieves, if they get caught stealing a car, they may get probation. They may get something very low, a fine. Very rarely do anybody involved in a property crime receive a jail sentence. That's very rare. And the difference, if you think about it, if you steal a truckload or a shipping container that's worth $500,000 versus being caught with 10 kilos of cocaine, you're going to go to jail for the cocaine. You likely will not go to jail for stolen merchandise. because it's not a violent crime. That's not the way things are done in Canada right now. People don't go to jail for these kind of things. They get put on probation. It's the revolving door syndrome again. It just moves around and moves around. And to the people involved in it, it's a cost of doing business. They might lose one load, but they might have 10 more loads that are going through and not being caught, or 20 being going through. Years ago, we did an operation shipping stolen car, where a group was shipping stolen cars out across the ocean on containers, similar to what they're doing now. And what we did when we found out where they were and where they were shipping the cars, we went to the border, or we went to the port where they were being shipped out at. We knew the container they were in. Once they passed customs, we took the stolen cars out of the containers, filled the containers with garbage, scrap metal, so they still had the weight, and we let them get on the ship, close them back up, put them on the ship, and we had about 30 to 45 days to do an investigation before it arrived on the other end, and that allowed us to kind of investigate for further time, recover more cars, and recover more things that were being shipped over. And that worked great, but that's only one of many shipping containers that get shipped out of the country every day. And Jamie talked about how, cars are being seen in other countries many times. They don't even take the license plates off these cars when they go into other countries. You can see them on YouTube. You can see them in photographs with Ontario license plates being driven in the deserts and in other countries. They don't care. And the probability of getting your vehicle back or getting your merchandise back once it's gone to another country, that's very unlikely. Even if it's identified by the police in the two countries, you're probably never going to see it again. It's gone. So obviously that moves into prevention and what we can do moving forward to try and stop this from happening or reduce it from happening. I'm a big fan of what's called layered security. One thing might stop one person, but if you have 10 different things that are in your security package, it's more likely you're going to stop the person from stealing your particular item. You can have mobile patrols of your yard that are random, where you have a security guard or you have an employee that's walking the perimeter, checking it at random hours, not the same time every day, because these guys do watch out and they look and they watch for patterns. You have motion sensors that notify security staff or an employee that there's movement in your yard. This is all technology that we can utilize today and use to our advantage. Lighting, motion sensitive lighting, high-end locks on your gates that are connected to the internet now, that will tell you when your lock is opened on a gate, and they're connected through Wi-Fi or GPS, and you will know exactly when a lock is open, and you can say whether or not that lock should be opened. Pin locks, gates, repairing your facility, making sure that you don't have holes in your fences or gaps in your yard that can allow vehicles to travel through. I use the analogy or the term deter, delay, and defend. The more that you can layer these things, the more it is that the thief that comes into your yard or onto your property, and if they see multiple layers of security present, they're going to move on to the one that's easier. The harder you make it, the more likely they will move on and go somewhere to the next Mercedes that's in the next driveway as opposed to yours. You know what? You got to take care of your own stuff first. And if your neighbor's not doing the same, then his is more subject to being stolen than yours is the way it's been seen now. Because unless they're looking for your load or your specific car, they're going to move on. There is certain circumstances where they are looking specifically for a color, a model, a year of a vehicle, and they're going to go out and get that one. If that's yours in your driveway, they're going to take that one regardless of the security steps you put in place. That's what they want. Same as a cargo theft load or heavy equipment. If they want something specific, they're going to get it. So the more you can deter and delay them, that gives the more opportunity for police or for someone within your company or yourself to realize there's a theft going on. I got to report it. I got to get the police out there. I have to have somebody respond myself. and mobilize right away. If you don't take those steps, you might as well leave your gates open and, let the people come in and drive out with all your stuff, even during working hours, because that's essentially what you're doing by not taking some security steps and dealing with that overall. One last thing I want to throw out there as well is I was on my way to dropping my daughter off at the bus stop a couple of weeks ago. In my own neighborhood, my own residential neighborhood's been getting hit by overnight. 1 or 2 cars a night are going in the neighborhood. I happen to see what I believed was a stolen Toyota Highlander, which are high on the list, right near my daughter's bus stop. Had a look at it, and sure enough, I noticed the signs that it was likely a stolen vehicle. One of the windows was partially down. The driver's side door handle was not fully intact. It had a license plate cover around it that was not from our area. It was from out in Scarborough, North York, Scarborough. All those clues to me said, this isn't right. That car shouldn't be here. I don't recognize it in the area. Sure enough, I called into PO region and they said, yeah, it's we believe it's stolen as well. They're going to contact the owner. They're going to do all the things. They said, yeah, we'll be there, but it might be a long time. I said, well, what's a long time? They said probably 4 to 6 hours before we get there. And like, this is at 8:30 in the morning, like 4 to 6 hours. I'm not sitting around there watching this car for the next 4 to 6 hours. What is that car doing there? Typically what they do is the thieves will put it in an area and it has a cooling off period. It might sit there for 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, and then the thieves will come back, get back in the car if it hasn't been recovered, and they will take it and drive away and put it on the shipping container and it'll be gone. That is a high potential if you find a vehicle in your area that is just on a cooling off period. Could be in a parking lot, could be anywhere. If you as insurers or your clients have GPS locators in their vehicles and they find out that it's in a parking lot or it's in another neighborhood and they call the police and they're going to be 4 to 6 hours before they get there, that's an issue. That's a big issue on recovery. It could be gone by the time the police show up if somebody's not there watching it. I have something I'm trying to put together and looking at with my company, with GardaWorld, is that one thing that we can do working with some of our partners would be to, if we know that the vehicle is in another area, we could go there. We could, with our mobile patrol people that are driving around the city all the time anyway, with a device in their vehicle called a wheel lock, go there, throw a wheel lock on the vehicle, sit there, wait for the police to arrive. At least you know then that the vehicle is not going to drive away. Nobody's going to come up and now take the vehicle and drive it away if there's a vehicle lock on it and a marked security car in the area. You've prevented that car from being shipped over and being a total loss by spending 4, 6, or 8 hours for a security officer to sit on that vehicle until the police come or until it can be recovered by the owner. So what the point of all this is we have to think of innovative new ideas to combat theft and to layer our security in order to prevent and deter and defend our property and make it harder for the thieves to get their hands on things that we are trying to protect. Because I can tell you right from the beginning of this, as I said, nothing has changed. It's the same crimes that are happening over and over and over again, whether it's today, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, and it's going to continue on. It's just how we respond to it and what we do to prevent it further. That's mine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you all of you for some wonderful insights. We only have a couple of minutes, but we have had a couple of questions, which maybe I can throw out to the panel. One might be, we've talked a little bit about this, but what trends have we seen for claims frequency and severity relating to vehicle theft? So I think we heard a little bit from Jamie and Dawn about that. But if there's anything else anybody wants to add to that question, please do.
Yeah, I think just by overall oversight, Val, it used to be that there would be target commodities. Because of the supply chain challenges, anything that has value that can be flipped, as Stacy said, is disappearing these days. one of the other challenges is when it comes to transportation and trucking, power units used to disappear and reappear after the goods had been fenced, but now power units are staying disappeared. And what the theory is they're parted out and sold for parts.
Right. And I guess the question probably on all risk managers' minds is what's happening. How is all of these trends impacting pricing these days on that coverage?
Well, I mean, with respect to cargo, you probably have seen that over the past few years, insurance prices on cargo have gone up because of the theft trends. A lot of the companies that specialize in insuring this type of coverage, they're realizing the theft trends and they're seeing it impacting the loss ratio. Also, what you've probably found is that there's fewer companies out there that are even offering cargo insurance. You may have to find a specialty carrier, especially if you are looking to cover a specific high targeted type of load or high value type of load. Your options with respect to finding a market that will ensure that may be thinner than what it was before. So it certainly has had a significant impact on the availability of insurance coverage and pricing over the last 10, 20 years. And as Stacey was saying, the trend here, it's continuing. It's not getting better. It's just a matter of how do we keep ahead of the thieves and what's happening out there. With respect to vehicle thefts, again, that's being tracked very, very carefully to see what kind of vehicles are being targeted and what needs to be done in order to suggest ways of preventing and curbing those trends. And certainly if you own a fleet and you've been targeted for theft, a lot of those incurred losses actually fall back into your loss history. So eventually it will impact your pricing. So whatever you can do to, first of all, be proactive and prevent yourself from being a target for theft is better. And whatever you can do to mitigate the loss due to theft, it will be a benefit in the long run.
Okay, one more. I know we're almost out of time, but this one's an interesting question. And that is really, how is it so easy that these cars are being shipped out of the country? And maybe there's a comment to what the industry is doing to try to identify it at that stage of the cycle when these things are being shipped.
Yeah, so there's definitely an area that we've been looking at, and one of the things we've been working with is actually the Canadian Border Services to understand, how they can improve some of their processes and how they can work with the police and with insurers to help us identify any vehicles that are being shipped overseas. But really what's going to stop the vehicles getting there is usually the tracking devices or some of the things that we recommended in today to actually prevent the vehicles even getting to that point on the shipping containers. But yeah, it's definitely an area we've been working on, and also looking, working with the manufacturers and working with the government to kind of make the penalties tougher on criminals around this as well.
Yeah, just on that as well, how easy is it how is it that any car can get shipped out of the country? If you go to any one of the ports where there are shipping containers and you see the amount of shipping containers that are leaving the country on any one day out of any one port, you can only imagine that there's only a small number of CBSA officers that are actually looking at examining containers that are leaving the port. They can only look at so many per day when there's hundreds of thousands leaving the ports. So that's when I talk about it's a cost of doing business to some of these operators, that if they lose one container that has 3 cars in it, they probably have 5 or 6 more that are going in the next day or so, and it's not really a big deal to them. So it's just that they can't check every container leaving the country. It's just impossible to do. There's just too many, and it's they file the paperwork, they put on it a fictitious cargo that's inside the container, and if it looks good on the paperwork, it goes through. Most of them are caught through random checks, and unless there's an informant that tells CBSA that something's going on, and they have a case being built against them. But it's hard to catch them at the border. The key is to do it before they get there.
Yeah. Okay, unfortunately, we are out of time. There are some other questions that are very good here. We will be sharing the presentation, the PowerPoint and the recording. Maybe we can do some follow-up and communication in terms of some of the answers to some of these other questions, specifically some questions regarding fleet user policies and things like that and how you should write those up. But we are at 2:02, so I'm afraid we are going to have to cut it off. I do want to thank all of our speakers. This has been extremely insightful and informative. It is a very hot topic for risk managers, and we certainly appreciate all of your input today. So thank you so much. And we wish everyone a great rest of your week, and we'll see you at the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.